The building called it a routine modernization. New lobby tile, new mailboxes, new security cameras that made residents feel safer even if they never actually looked at the footage. The kind of renovation that comes with polite flyers under your door and the faint smell of drywall dust that creeps into your clothes. But the people who'd lived there long enough knew the truth. Buildings don't just get modernized, they get older. And when they get older, they start giving things back. Maple Court sat on the edge of a downtown that had tried, failed, tried again, and finally started winning. 12 stories of tan brick and narrow balconies built in an era when efficient meant thin walls and optimistic plumbing. It was the type of place where you learned your neighbors' schedules without meaning to. The elevator creaked at the same times every morning. Someone always cooked onions late at night. A certain stairwell door had a squeal that could wake you up if you were listening for it. Unit 812 was on the 8th floor near the end of the hall. The door always looked slightly darker than the others, like it had absorbed years of handprints and small disappointments, and for a long time, it belonged to a tenant named Nora Klein. If you asked the building manager back then, he would have described her the way managers describe tenants when they don't want trouble. Quiet, paid on time, no complaints. If you asked the people on the 8th floor, they'd say she was polite but distant. If you asked the maintenance guy, he'd say she was the one who never let you inside unless she had to. Nora was in her late 20s when she moved in. She had a careful way of walking, as if she didn't want the floor to notice her. Her hair was usually tied back. Her clothes were simple. She always held her keys like she was ready to use them as a weapon if needed. She worked nights, at least that's what most people assumed. They saw her leaving as the sun dropped and returning when the building was half asleep. Sometimes she carried a tote bag that looked heavier than it should have been. Sometimes she came back with nothing at all. She didn't have visitors. Not that anyone could recall. No boyfriend lingering in the hallway. No friends laughing in the elevator. No family dropping off casserole like you see in movies. Just Nora. The elevator in the end of hall darkness on a Tuesday in early fall. She moved out. At least, that was the story the building told itself after the fact, because nobody saw the move. No truck, no furniture carried down, no boxes stacked near the elevator, no loud thump of a couch scraping a doorframe, no neighbor complaining about the hallway being blocked. One day, Nora's door was just different. The peephole had been covered with a piece of tape, not the small, clear kind. A strip of dull gray that looked like it belonged to a maintenance cart. The doormat was gone. The little plant she kept on the balcony, some hardy, half-dead thing that refused to quit, was missing too. And the next morning, a typed notice appeared at the building office corkboard. Unit 812. Tenant vacated. No forwarding address provided. It was not unusual for tenants to leave with minimal notice. Maple Court wasn't a luxury building. People came and went. Jobs changed. Relationships collapsed. Rent got raised. Life did what it does. But this one stuck. It stuck because Nora didn't just leave. She erased herself. Her name disappeared from the mailbox slot. Her call box button went blank. The building's rental system showed move out processed, but there was no exit interview, no key return, no deposit request. The manager at the time, a man named George Melvin, said he'd received an email from Nora. Short, professional, something like, "I have moved out. Please keep my deposit." No signature, no details, no emotion, just a clean cut. When George went up to inspect the unit, he said the place looked staged. Not empty the way a real move-out looks. Not scuffed and chaotic with forgotten junk in corners. It looked too clean. Like someone had wiped the walls. Like someone had vacuumed twice. The closet was empty. The kitchen cabinets were empty. The bathroom medicine cabinet was empty. The only thing left behind was a faint scent of bleach. George changed the locks and listed the unit. It rented quickly. It always did. New tenants came. New routines. New late-night onion smells. Maple Court kept breathing. Except some residents swore they'd heard odd noises from 812 in the weeks after Nora left. Not footsteps, not voices, something else. A soft, rhythmic tapping behind the wall, like a knuckle testing a surface. Someone joked it was mice. Someone else said it was the HVACs. Someone else said it was the building settling. But the maintenance guy, Hector, later admitted he'd felt uneasy about that corner of the hall for years. He couldn't explain it. It was just the way the air felt slightly colder near that unit, even in summer. As time passed, the story of Nora Klein turned into a building myth. People embellished it. Of course they did. A secret boyfriend. A witness protection situation, a mental break. A crime nobody knew about. In a building where everyone lived inches from each other, the idea that someone could vanish without a sound was both terrifying and weirdly thrilling. Then 12 years went by. Buildings are patient. Myths age like mildew. By the time the modernization project began, most residents didn't even know Nora's name. George Melvin had retired. Hector had moved to another building. The 8th floor had been repainted twice. The old carpet had been replaced with cheap laminate that clicked under your shoes. The current building manager, Alicia Trent, was the kind of professional who ran on schedules and spreadsheets. She didn't believe in building ghosts. She believed in budgets and tenant satisfaction surveys. The modernization included an HVAC overhaul. The system was old, inefficient, and full of return vents placed in odd spots because the building had been designed by someone who thought airflow was a suggestion. Contractors were hired, walls were opened, ductwork was replaced, return grills were resized. The building groaned politely as strangers with tool belts cut into it. On the 8th floor, the plans called for opening a return vent located in the hallway near Unit 812. The return was hidden behind an old decorative panel that had been installed decades earlier to make the hallway look less industrial. The contractors removed the panel. Behind it was an older grill, painted over so many times it looked like it had scales. They unscrewed it and found that the return duct behind it had been walled off. Not by accident, someone had built a false backing inside the return, sealing off the space behind the grill with drywall and joint compound. The edges were taped. The surface had been painted to match the inside of the duct. It was careful work, not the kind of thing a random handyman would do because he was lazy. One contractor, a broad-shouldered guy named Mason, knocked on the drywall with the back of his screwdriver and frowned. In a sound was too solid for a duct void. It sounded like a hidden room. Alicia was called up. She arrived with her clipboard like she was expecting a minor problem and not a story that would swallow her week. Mason pointed. "This shouldn't be here." Alicia asked if it was dangerous. Mason shrugged. "Could be hiding damage. Could be hiding something else." Alicia didn't like something else. She authorized removal. Mason cut a square through the drywall and pulled the piece free. Cold air breathed out, and behind the cutout, in the dark cavity of the return duct, sat a bag. not a random piece of trash, not a contractor's forgotten lunch. A packed bag, upright, pressed back into the corner like someone had placed it, and then closed the wall as if finishing a sentence. It was a medium-sized duffel, black, with 2 handles and a shoulder strap. The fabric looked older than the building's new paint, and it was dusted with a fine layer of gray that suggested it had been waiting there for a long time. Alicia stared at it. Mason did not reach in immediately. Contractors see weird things sometimes, but they also know when something feels like it belongs to someone else's nightmare. He asked if Alicia wanted him to pull it out. Alicia hesitated and then did the thing building managers always do when they are nervous. She tried to make it procedural. She said they should call the police just in case. When the first responding officer arrived, he looked at the cut duct opening and then at the bag, like he was measuring the odds that his day had just gotten longer. He asked the contractors not to touch it. He asked Alicia for any information about the building's history. Alicia gave him a file folder with maintenance records, which felt useless in the face of a hidden bag. More officers arrived, a detective followed, then another. The hallway filled with people pretending they weren't curious. They pulled the bag out slowly and placed it on a drop cloth. It was heavier than it looked. The detective, a woman named Serena Wills, put on gloves and examined the zippers. She noted the layer of dust. She noted that the bag's strap had been tucked in neatly, not tangled. She looked at Alicia. Any idea who lived in 812 years ago? Alicia's expression said she'd rather be asked to recite tax code. She said she'd have to check old files. Serena waited. The bag waited too. Alicia returned with a battered archive box from the storage closet. Maple Court was not good at preserving history, but it was good at preserving paperwork, because paperwork protects money. Alicia flipped through old tenant lists until she found a name. Nora Klein. Serena repeated it out loud. The name sounded like a key, turning in a lock. She asked Alicia whether Nora had a forwarding address. Alicia found none. Serena asked if there had been a police report at the time. Alicia shook her head. Serena looked at the bag again. Then she opened it. Inside were clothes, folded tightly. Not fashionable clothes, practical ones. Dark sweaters, jeans, socks, a plain hoodie, a pair of cheap gloves. Beneath the clothes was a small zip pouch with toiletries, a toothbrush, a travel-sized toothpaste, a comb, a tiny bottle of perfume that had lost most of its scent, but still held a ghost of it. There was a sealed envelope, yellowed at the edges, and at the bottom was a phone. Not a modern smartphone. An older model, the kind with a plastic back you could pop off to change the battery. Serena's eyes narrowed. The envelope was labeled with a name, written in careful block letters. Nora Klein. No address, no date, no explanation, just her name. Serena did not open it immediately. She bagged everything separately. She treated the find like evidence, not like a curiosity. Because people don't wall bags into HVAC returns for fun. The police took the bag. The hallway returned to normal, except it didn't. People started whispering. Residents leaned out of doors. Someone posted on a neighborhood forum that Maple Court found a secret bag in the walls, and within hours the story had grown teeth and wings. Alicia spent the next day answering calls from residents who wanted to know if there was a serial killer in the building. She told them there was no danger, which was technically true, but she could hear the doubt in her own voice. Serena Wills began what she called the reconstruction. She requested Nora Klein's old lease file. She pulled Nora's ID scan that had been taken at move-in. She pulled the emergency contact listed on the form. The emergency contact was a name Alicia didn't recognize. E. Klein. No phone number, just a name. Serena ran Nora's name through missing person databases. No match. She ran it through criminal databases. Nothing. She checked DMV records. Nora's driver's license had expired 5 years after she moved out. It had not been renewed. She checked credit activity. There was none after the move-out month. No new credit lines, no card use, no address updates. Nora had not only left Maple Court, she had stopped participating in the modern world. Serena went to the most basic source of truth, the old building manager. George Melvin answered the phone with the cautious, slightly annoyed tone of a man who didn't like being reminded he had once been responsible for other people's problems. But when Serena said the name Nora Klein, George fell silent. He said, "I remember her." Serena asked about the email. George said yes. He'd gotten an email. It came late at night. It was short. It said Nora had moved out. It said she didn't care about the deposit. George said he thought it was strange, but not strange enough to call police. He said tenants did strange things all the time. Serena asked if he'd ever entered the unit after she left. George said yes. He inspected it. He said it was the cleanest move-out he'd ever seen. Serena asked if he'd noticed anything missing that should have been there. George said he didn't know what should have been there. Serena asked if he'd ever noticed anyone working on the hallway return vent. George laughed, short and humorless. "Nobody notices the vents," he said. "That's why it's a good place to hide something, I guess." Serena asked about Hector, the old maintenance guy. George gave her Hector's number. Hector answered on the second ring. When Serena said Maple Court, Hector sighed like a man lifting an old box. When Serena said the vent, Hector went quiet. Then he said, "I always wondered about that." Serena asked what he meant. Hector told her about the tapping. He said he used to hear it sometimes late at night near 8:12, like someone knocking from the inside of the wall. He said he checked for pests. He said he checked the ductwork. He found nothing. He stopped mentioning it because people laughed. Serena asked if Hector had ever been asked to close up a vent. Hector said no. Then he added something that made Serena's skin tighten. He said, "But there was one time I saw fresh compound around that grill." Serena asked when. Hector said it was not long after Nora moved out. He said he noticed it because it wasn't painted over properly yet. He said he assumed a contractor had patched something and moved on. Serena wrote that down. Then she opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper folded twice. The handwriting was the same careful block style as the label. There was no dramatic confession, no long letter, just a few lines. "If you found this, please do not call the building. Please do not post this online. Please call the number below and tell them the return is open. Then leave the bag where you found it." Beneath that was a phone number. The paper looked old but not fragile. The ink had held. Serena stared at the number. Then she did what detectives do when something feels both promising and dangerous. She didn't call it from her own phone. She didn't call it from the station line. She used a department cell assigned for sensitive leads, and she recorded the call. It rang. Once, twice. Then someone answered. A man's voice. Low, calm, not surprised. He said, "Yes." Serena said nothing for a moment, letting the silence do what silence does. Then she said, "The return is open." The man didn't ask who she was. He didn't ask what building. He didn't ask what return. He simply said, "Thank you." Serena's pulse lifted. "Who are you?" she asked. The man paused. He said, "You shouldn't have called from a police line." Serena's hand tightened on the phone. She said, "It wasn't." The man breathed, almost like a quiet laugh. "Okay," he said. "Then you're smarter than most." Serena asked where Nora was. The man said, "Safe." Serena asked, "Safe from what?" The man said, "From being found by people who don't deserve to find her." Serena said, "You're going to have to give me more than that." The man said, "No." Gently, like he was explaining a fact to a child. "I don't." Serena's voice sharpened. "We found a bag walled into a duct. That's not normal. That's not safe. That's not..." The man interrupted, still calm. "It was the safest place," he said, "because nobody looks there." Serena asked for his name. He said, "You already have it somewhere in your paperwork." Then he hung up. Serena sat very still. The case was no longer a curiosity. It was alive. She traced the number. It was a prepaid line, long dormant, recently reactivated. The billing address was nonsense. The activation location was in a neighboring state. Whoever this man was, he knew how to disappear. Serena went back to the bag. The phone at the bottom was old but intact. She had it sent to digital forensics. They removed the battery. They documented the SIM. They cloned the data. The phone powered on. And the first thing it displayed was a draft message, unsent, saved in the outbox like a bottle stuck in time. "If I'm late, use the return. Don't trust the building. Don't trust the cameras. Tell E." Serena stared at "Tell E. Klein," the emergency contact. Serena traced E. Klein through public records. There were multiple, too many, but one stood out: Elijah Klein, a man in his late 30s, a former HVAC contractor with a license that had been revoked years ago, not for fraud, not for theft, for assault. Serena pulled the report. The details were ugly but familiar: controlling behavior, forced entry, stalking, violation of protective orders. The kind of case that makes your stomach twist because it's a story you've heard in different names 100 times. Elijah Klein had been married once. His ex-wife had filed restraining orders. The name on those filings was Nora Klein. Serena felt her jaw tighten. Nora wasn't a mysterious criminal. She wasn't in witness protection. She wasn't a ghost. She was someone who had tried to disappear from a man who refused to let her. Serena dug deeper. She found that Nora had filed for a restraining order shortly before she moved into Maple Court. It had been granted. Then later, it had been dismissed when Nora failed to appear at a hearing. Serena knew that pattern too. People disappear not because they're guilty. They disappear because they're tired of being hunted. Serena requested old building security footage from the year Nora moved out. Maple Court had upgraded systems since then, but the old camera drive had been archived in storage. Not complete, not high quality, but enough. She found footage from the night before the move-out notice appeared. The hallway camera on the 8th floor caught a man moving quickly, hood up, baseball cap low. He carried a tool bag. He stopped near the decorative return panel. He knelt. He worked. He covered the camera for a moment as he leaned in. When he stood, the panel looked normal. Then the man walked to Unit 812. He didn't knock. He used a key. Serena replayed that frame until her eyes hurt. If he had a key, he was either the tenant or someone who had stolen one. Serena looked at the timestamp and compared it to building access logs. The access log didn't go that far back. Convenient. She checked apartment key records. Keys were supposed to be controlled, but buildings are messy. Alicia admitted a master key had once gone missing years ago and was probably recovered. Probably. Serena drove to Elijah Klein's last known address. He wasn't there. Neighbors said he moved out years ago. One neighbor said he'd gotten weird and started talking about finding her. Serena checked his employment. Elijah had worked briefly for a contractor that did side jobs for Maple Court around the time Nora moved out. It was starting to line up too cleanly. Serena went back to the phone. In the photo gallery, there were images Nora had taken. Not selfies, not smiling, not vacation. Photos of bruises on her arm, photos of a door frame with fresh splinters, photos of a car parked across the street, the same car in 3 different photos, always watching. There were also photos of the HVAC's return grill. One photo showed it open, the cavity behind it. Another showed a bag placed inside. Another showed drywall cut to fit. Nora had documented it the way people document the only plan they have left. Serena listened to voice memos. They were short, whispered, recorded late at night. Nora's voice was steady, but there was tension inside it, like a wire pulled tight. She said she couldn't trust the building manager because Elijah had charmed him once before. She said she couldn't trust the cameras because cameras belong to the building, and buildings belong to people who wanted quiet, not justice. She said she had one plan. If she ever had to leave fast, she'd leave a bag in the return and an envelope with the phrase, "The return is open." She said if someone ever found it, it meant she never came back. Serena sat back in her chair and felt anger rise, slow and thick. Because what Nora had built was not a prank. It was a survival mechanism, and it had worked partly. She vanished from Maple Court and stayed gone, but the bag remained like an alarm that nobody heard for 12 years. Serena called the number again. This time it was disconnected. Of course it was. The man had known she would call. He had answered once to confirm someone found the bag, then he vanished again. Serena realized something that made her stomach tighten in a different way. The phone call wasn't meant to help the police, it was meant to signal someone. Someone on Nora's side. Someone who had been waiting for the phrase. Serena looked again at the instruction. Call the number and say, "The return is open." Then leave the bag where you found it. That wasn't written for a detective. That was written for a civilian. It was written for a future tenant, a contractor, a maintenance worker. Someone who might find the bag and follow the instructions without thinking about chain of custody. It was written to trigger a retrieval. Meaning, Nora expected someone to come back for the bag, or someone else did. Serena checked the renovation schedule. The return vent wasn't supposed to be opened until next week, but contractors had moved ahead because of a delay on another floor. Someone may have expected more time. Serena requested the building's new lobby camera footage from the day the vent was opened, and she found the moment. A man in a dark cap entered Maple Court at midday, carrying a small paper bag like lunch. He didn't check in. He didn't speak to Alicia. He walked past the mailboxes and toward the elevators. The elevator camera caught him pressing the button for the 8th floor. He didn't look like a contractor, no tool belt, no hard hat. He looked like someone visiting. The 8th floor hallway camera caught him walking toward Unit 812. Then he paused. He looked at the return panel area. He stood still for a long moment as if listening. Then he turned and walked away quickly, almost too quickly. Serena replayed the clip. The man's face was partially visible for a second. She froze the frame. The jawline, the eyes, not Elijah, someone else. Serena ran facial recognition through departmental tools. Nothing. She ran it through driver's license databases. Still nothing. But one thing did return. An old mugshot from a county 2 states away. A man arrested for minor fraud. Name, Roland Klein. Same last name. Serena pulled his file. Roland had no listed relation to Elijah, but that didn't mean anything. Names change. People lie. Serena requested phone records tied to Roland's old cases. She found a contact number that had pinged near Maple Court the day of the vent opening. The same prepaid line Nora had written in the envelope. So Roland was the voice, not Elijah. Serena's mind shifted. If Roland wasn't Elijah, then who was he? A friend, a fixer, someone Nora trusted, or someone Elijah hired? Serena needed to know which direction the knife pointed. She brought Mara-like intensity into the interview room when she finally found Roland. They tracked him through vehicle registration, linked to a traffic stop camera. He was living in a cheap motel near the freeway, the kind of place with permanent stains and a lobby that pretends not to see anything. He didn't resist arrest. He looked tired, more than guilty. In the interview room, Serena placed the envelope on the table. She said, "Why did you tell her to hide a bag in a wall?" Roland stared at it. He said, "Because she needed a way out that didn't rely on anyone believing her." Serena said, "Who are you?" Roland hesitated. Then he said, "Her brother." Serena's eyebrows rose. Roland explained that Nora had changed her emergency contact name on the lease file because she was scared Elijah would trace her family. She listed E as a decoy. The building file was wrong. The real E was not Elijah. It was someone else. Serena waited. Roland said his real name was Elias. He said Nora called him E. He said he used Roland sometimes because he'd been in trouble years ago and didn't want attention. Serena asked where Nora was. Roland said, "Alive." Serena asked where. Roland said he wouldn't tell. Not because he enjoyed power, because he didn't trust systems. He said Elijah had friends. He said Elijah had a talent for turning institutions into weapons. Serena leaned forward. "Then why answer the phone at all?" Roland said, "Because if someone found the bag, it meant something went wrong." Serena said, "Did it go wrong?" Roland's face tightened. He said it went wrong in a way nobody expected. He said Nora had planned to retrieve the bag within weeks of leaving. She wanted to keep it as a backup, a go bag with clothes, toiletries, and the old phone with proof of Elijah's stalking. But she never came back, because coming back meant risk. Then she rebuilt her life under a new name. A quiet life. A life where she didn't have to look over her shoulder every time an elevator opened. Roland said the bag became a relic, a piece of the old terror sealed away. Serena asked why he came to Maple Court the day the return was opened. Roland said he had a notification set up, not a building alert, a different kind. He had contacts. He kept an ear open. He heard about HVAC work at Maple Court and panicked. He came to make sure the bag didn't fall into the wrong hands. Serena said, "The wrong hands meaning Elijah." Roland's eyes hardened. "Meaning the internet," he said. "Meaning anyone who would turn her fear into content." Serena didn't like being called out, but she understood the point. She asked the one question that mattered most. Is Elijah still looking for her? Roland answered immediately. Yes. Serena felt the room get colder, not from air conditioning, but from meaning. Roland said Elijah had never stopped. He said Elijah had tried different methods over the years. Private investigators, fake job postings, social media stalking, a string of small-time connections who did favors. Roland said the reason the restraining order hearing was missed years ago was because Nora had been followed that day. She chose safety over court. Serena asked if Elijah knew about the bag. Roland said no. It was Nora's idea. The return was the one place she believed no one would check. She said Elijah watched doors and windows. He didn't watch ducks. Serena leaned back. Now the find made sense, and it was worse than mystery. It was a survival story that had been rotting inside the building for 12 years, waiting for someone to open a wall. Serena's case shifted. It was no longer find the missing tenant. It was protect the tenant who escaped. Serena advised Nora through Roland that the bag had been found and the envelope had been opened by police. She insisted on a safe contact method. She insisted on a way to confirm Nora's well-being without exposing her location. Roland relayed the message. 2 days later, Serena received a package at the station. No return address. Inside was a single postcard, blank, and a small printed photo. The photo showed a woman's hand holding a coffee cup on a porch. The hand wore a ring with a tiny chip in the band. Serena compared the hand to Nora's move-in ID photo, zooming in on the ring visible there too. Same chip, same ring. A handwritten note on the back of the photo said, "I'm here. Don't look for me, please." Serena sat quietly for a long time after reading that. She wanted to close cases. She wanted to solve mysteries. She wanted to put things in boxes with labels. But sometimes the solution wasn't bringing someone back. Sometimes it was keeping them gone. Serena didn't stop the investigation into Elijah Klein. She went after him on what she could prove. Prior assault, stalking, violation history, potential illegal entry, potential involvement with a hallway camera being covered years earlier. She pushed for renewed warrants. She pushed for monitoring. She pushed for charges that didn't require Nora to appear in court and relive everything. Elijah was eventually picked up on an outstanding warrant in another county after a bar fight of all things. His arrogance hadn't aged well. The system finally caught him the way it catches men who think consequences are for other people. Serena visited Maple Court one last time before the renovations finished. The hallway looked brighter now. New paint, new lights, clean lines. The kind of clean that tries to erase what happened. She stood near the old return vent location and listened. No tapping, no whispers. Just the hum of airflow and the distant clunk of an elevator. Alicia asked if everything was okay now. Serena said, "It depends on what you mean by okay." She meant Nora was alive. She meant Nora was still afraid. She meant for 12 years, a bag had sat behind drywall, packed for escape, and nobody knew. And she meant something else too, something that made her throat tighten unexpectedly. A building can hide a lot. It can hide mold, rats, secrets, violence. But sometimes it also hides a person's last good plan, a plan built not out of mystery, but out of a simple, stubborn refusal to be caught. The return was open, the bag was found, and Nora, wherever she was, stayed exactly where she needed to be, out of reach. Because sometimes the scariest ending isn't that someone disappeared, it's that they had to,